أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. هو الذي يصلي عليكم هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور. وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. تحيتهم يوم يلقونه سلام. تحيتهم يوم يلقونه سلام وأعد لهم أجرا كريما. يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا وبشر المؤمنين. بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Jazakallah, brother. Now I'd like to invite Brother Muhammad Ibrahim to recite a poem in honor of our beloved Imam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوات. Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. I hear the munajat of Ali from the dawning sunrise. I wonder why he weeps so much this 19th morning and cries. Why the blood-red colors in the skies this 19th morning? Why are all the birds and all the beasts restless and mourning? Why such strong winds and why trees swaying as if to break dead? It seems this day the world's to end. I shudder and clutch my head. Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. Mola walks on towards the masjid where he knows what's to come. I hear him ask repentance and patience in a deep hum. I know not why, but I want to try to stop him going. But he smiles at me and tells me his fate is waiting. Sorrow overcomes me as he steps inside the masjid. The trees and beasts all weep with me from all around and surround. Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. Salawat.
Jazakallah, brother. Just a reminder, after Majlis, inshallah, we will be having Amal for the night of Qadr in the adjacent hall. So please do stay for that if you can. Inshallah, thank you for your timeliness, and we will continue with this schedule in the next few nights. As mentioned, tomorrow will be Majalis only after Iftar in this hall, and then on Thursday will be similar to today, Majalis and then Amal after Iftar, inshallah. I would like to now humbly invite our respected scholars, Sayyid Sulaiman Abdi, to the member to recite the Majlis, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is already the eve of the 19th of the month of Ramadan, which means that almost 2/3 of the month has already passed. And we have now entered the most important part of this month. The last 10 nights of the month, they are the nights in which Laylatul Qadr is said to fall, the night of destiny, the night in which God's decree for each of us individually and for us as a collective is revealed and is determined. And صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. So if we can request one more salawat, and men, if you can move forward to make room for ladies who are joining. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. These nights of Qadr or of destiny, they are when our individual and our collective destiny is decided and then is sent down by Allah. And it is one of the favors of Allah for us that these nights of Qadr, they are very closely affiliated not only with our destiny and with the revelation of the Quran, but with the remembrance of one individual who most clearly represents the message and the miracle of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And the one who can serve for us as a gate towards recognition of Allah towards understanding of the Quran, towards an understanding of what Islam is, and a gate to open up the best decree and destiny that Allah gives anyone, and that is the successor of our Prophet and our first Imam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim as-salam. So tonight, in addition to being the first of the 3 main nights of Qadr, it is the night in which Amir al-Mu'mineen was struck by an assassin's blow, and a night in which a grave tragedy befell not just the family and the progeny of the Prophet, not just the Shia and the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, but all of humanity and all of creation. And when we remember Allah through remembrance and love for the Prophet and his family, through remembrance and love for Ahlul Bayt, through remembrance and love for Imam Ali, then not only do we develop a stronger connection to Allah, but we get a deeper understanding of how it is that we can approach Allah and come to Him. That is the benefit and the blessing of the remembrance of Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the Quran, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, salatu ala Muhammad, he was commanded by Allah to say that his prayer, his ritual, worship and devotion, and his life and existence itself and his death, all of them, they are not the property of the Prophet. They are not of him or for him as an individual, but rather they belong to Allah. قُلْ إِنَّا صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. O Messenger, say to the people, inform them, and in your informing them, invite them and call them to this higher form of existence. Say that I am not living for my own desires and preferences and for my worldly life, but rather, inna salati wa nusuki, my prayer, my supplication, my ritual, worship, devotion, wa mahyaya wa mamati, and my life itself and my death, lillahi rabbil alameen. They are the property of and they are dedicated towards Allah, who is the Lord of the worlds. That was the motto, and that was the path of our Prophet, and it was the path of his family and progeny after him, and no one more so than Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim as-salam, who was his successor and his heir and the personification of his teachings. Imam Ali alayhi salam was not just a follower of the Prophet or a companion of the Prophet, as some Muslims will see him, a companion among the companions, a follower and a scholar among the associates of our Prophet, but rather he was the self, the person, and he was the personification of the message of the Prophet. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And if we see the Quran as the Prophet's miracle, then Hadithul Manzilah says that the Quran and Ahlul Bayt, they are co-equals. Inni tarikun fikum al-thaqalain, kitab Allah وَعِتْرَتِي أَهْلَ بَيْتِي. The Prophet has said that I am leaving among you two equal things, two weighty things. One of them is the Book of God, and one of them is the progeny of the Prophet, and the need for both of them is equal in terms of attaining guidance. And that is because لَن يَفْتَرِقَا حَتَّى يَرِدَ عَلَيَّ الْحَوْض. They cannot be separated. So if you have the Quran in your imagination, but you don't have the Prophet's progeny, and they are not your role models and your leaders, then in reality you don't have the Quran. And if you say that you love the family of the Prophet and the progeny of the Prophet, but you do not care about or care for or understand or apply the teachings of the Quran, then in reality you do not have a connection and a closeness to the progeny of the Prophet, because you cannot have one without the other. لَن يَفْتَرِقَا. They shall not be separated until they meet the Prophet on the Day of Judgment. And that is not when they will be separated, but rather that is when they will be reunited with the Prophet and with those who have gone before. The continuing guidance of the Quran and the continuing guidance of Ahlul Bayt will be there on this earth so long as humanity exists and so long as this world exists. And therefore, if the Quran is the written miracle of the Prophet, then Imam Ali alayhi salam is the first of 12 living, breathing, speaking, and acting miracles of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. That is not poetry or hyperbole or exaggeration, but that is the reality of the role of both the Quran and Imam Ali in our lives and for our guidance. The miracle of the Quran is not just its words or its eloquence or its literary dimension. The miracle of the Quran is that it spells out in plain language what is the message of guidance and salvation and success for this life and for the eternal life. The perfection and the miraculousness of the Quran is in the beauty and in the comprehensiveness and in the profundity of the guidance it provides, before it is in the eloquence or the beauty of its language or its words or in any other dimension. And if the words of the Quran are miraculous because of the profundity of the message that they convey, then if there is a lived example of the totality of that message, if there is a human being whose life and whose character and whose teachings are the full application and implementation of the commandments and the teachings of the Quran, then the existence of that person and their character and their words and their deeds and example will be no less miraculous than the Quran itself. Because one is the text that describes the values and the life of the person, and the other is the lived example that describes the implementation of those written words. So one cannot be a miracle without the other one being an equal miracle and having equal depth and profundity. So without any exaggeration and without any hyperbole, we can say that just as the Quran is the written miracle of Islam, Imam Ali is the lived miracle of Islam and the messenger of Islam, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Salawat ala And there are different dimensions of that miraculousness. Because today is a day of ibadah, tonight is one of the nights of Qadr. And I know that it is a weeknight. Many of you may have school tomorrow, or you may have work, or you may have other commitments. But whatever we are able to benefit from the opportunity to worship, this is one of those important nights of prayer and supplication and worship. So today let us speak briefly about the worship and the ibadah of Imam Ali, to learn and to be inspired, inshallah, for our own worship during this night. You're all familiar that Imam Ali, he was known for many things, for his wisdom and eloquence. Just a small portion of his speeches and his sermons, they are collected in Nahjul Balagha. And that book, although it is not a perfect and it is not a complete repository of the words of Imam Ali, it is a partial repository, a partial collection of his letters and his statements, his sayings and his speeches. And yet, because it is a collection of the words of Imam Ali, it is considered to be the most eloquent book and the most eloquent words after the speech of Allah, the Quran, and after the words of Prophet Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah. The most comprehensive and eloquent book of guidance that we have in Islam is the words of Imam Ali. So he is known for his knowledge. He is known for his eloquence. He is known for his courage in battle. He is known for his generosity. Surah Al-Insan and the praise of the generosity of Ahlul Bayt, it was the sacrifice and the altruism of Imam Ali alayhi salam and Fatima Zahra alayhi salam above all else. But one aspect that was prominent in the life of Imam Ali was the nature of his ibadah and his worship. Now, in general, when people have one very visible attribute and one more private attribute, it is often the case that we remember what is visible and what is prominent, and we forget what is invisible and what is private. So sometimes we might get a mistaken impression of the character of a person, and we might get an incomplete picture of what brought about that wonderful character because of the intensity and the brightness of a prominent trait or something that is very visible, that shields from our eyesight or prevents us from appreciating what is behind that very visible attribute. We see that among some of our ulama, for example. If I mention some of our fuqaha, then most of us will probably associate them with one or two subjects that they were known for, when in reality, they may have both a great deal of scholarship and knowledge in many other disciplines as well, and their personal piety and character may have been an even greater achievement and a greater source of their greatness than their scholarship or the books that they wrote or the lessons that they taught, but that is not as visible. The way that they raised their children or they dealt with their family, that may have involved a greater sacrifice and be a greater sign of their greatness than the very public and visible aspect of their lives, but we don't remember them for that. because we don't talk about it and we don't see it as much. This is true not only of ulama, but it is also true of the members of the family of the Prophet as well. Whenever we remember Ja'far al-Tayyar, we remember somebody who was courageous in battle, because in the battle of Mu'tah, he went and he achieved martyrdom, and the Prophet said that he is Dhul Janahayn, because both of his arms were cut off in battle. Allah gave him wings with which he flies in the heavens alongside the angels. And so Ja'far al-Tayyar, he is remembered for that courage, he is remembered for that martyrdom and that sacrifice for Allah. But Ja'far al-Tayyar was not just a warrior or a courageous martyr in the path of Allah. He was also the leader of that immigration of Muslims to Abyssinia. And he was the one who recited the verses of Quran about Prophet Isa alayhi salam and Maryam salamullahi alayha that brought tears to the eyes of Najashi, and that gave Muslims more than a decade of refuge in Abyssinia and brought so many people towards Islam. That requires knowledge, that requires eloquence, that requires wisdom, and the ability not just to rush to a fight and call out an oppressor, but also to know what is it that is worth saying at one time and worth holding until a better opportunity or until circumstances ready a message to be conveyed. He was a scholar and a diplomat and a conveyor of the message of the Quran, who spoke it with eloquence and who lived it with eloquence, such that the people in that royal court of Abyssinia and the emperor himself were all in awe of both the words of revelation that Ja'far al-Tayyar was conveying and of this person who stood before the emperor of Abyssinia as an ambassador of Islam. And in reality, if you want to understand that courage in battle of Ja'far al-Tayyar, more than mention of the battle itself, the history of the Battle of Mu'tah, and how he was martyred, his ambassadorship of Islam in the court of Najashi will give you a better picture of who he was and what made him able to offer so much for Islam. Although that chapter is perhaps not as well known and as frequently mentioned. The same thing is true of a person that we can say is the second Ja'far al-Tayyar, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, the brother of Imam Hussein, the son and the representative of Imam Ali in the battle of Karbala. When I say Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, what comes to our mind immediately? That he was the foremost warrior of his time. That the name and mention of his courage and valor and his presence in the camp of Imam Hussein struck terror in the hearts of his enemies, even if they were in the thousands, and the followers of Imam Hussein were only in the tens. That Shimr tried to somehow dissuade Abbas alayhi salam from remaining in the battle by offering him a guarantee of safety. That wasn't just a guarantee of safety, but it was an effort to prevent that courageous supporter and aid to Imam Hussein from remaining in the battle, because the enemy feared his valor. They feared his courage. So when we remember Imam Hussein and we remember Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, we think of that courage. We think of the fear that his courage struck in the hearts of his enemy. We think of the way that he trained the youth of Banu Hashim for battle. Because whether it be Ali al-Akbar or Aun and Muhammad or Qasim, all of them were readied and were trained for battle by their uncle Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. But then, how did Ahlul Bayt themselves remember Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? There is a hadith attributed to our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. Allahumma salli. Inna lil-Abbas manzilatan inda Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala yaghbituhu biha jami'u ash-shuhada'i yawm al-qiyamah. There is a rank that Abbas alayhi salam has with Allah. That when that rank is disclosed to people on the Day of Judgment, all martyrs will have a feeling of envy that if only we could have that rank that Abbas alayhi salam had. This was not because of the battle that he fought. He didn't actually go and fight with his sword at all. That military courage and expertise, the horsemanship, and the ability to wield a weapon and to strike terror into the heart of the enemy and to make them flee, that is not the battle that Abbas alayhi salam fought at all in Karbala. So why will all martyrs, even those who faced enemies and were defeated in battle or were martyred in battle, why will they all have an envy of Abbas alayhi salam? It is because of his character, because of his intention and his wisdom and the profundity of his recognition of his duty. Now that is sometimes less easy for us to appreciate than the outward expression of his courage. But that is how Ahlul Bayt remembered him. In the words attributed to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, كان عمي العباس نافذ البصيرة صلب الإيمان. My uncle Abbas, he had penetrating insight. Not just a superficial courage, but he had penetrating insight, and he had a solid, impenetrable, unshakable faith in Allah. That is what made him great. And that is what gave him his courage. It wasn't just his physical strength or his military training that gave him his strength. It's very important for us to remember, because we live in a time and in a culture where what is visible and on display and can be photographed or shown online or to the external world, that becomes a substitute for the substance and the reality of what is important. In fact, sometimes we think that if we can fake something, then that is the reality, regardless of how much we have internalized what we say, how much we have internalized what we affirm or what we show to the world. But that is the sign of the greatness of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, of Ja'far al-Tayyar. One other example that I can give is Ali al-Akbar. Often we mention that he was very similar to Rasulullah. And Imam Hussein said in Karbala that whenever we wanted to remember the Prophet, we would look to Ali Akbar. But do you think it was the physical similarity that brought the image and the memory of the Prophet to the heart of Ahlul Bayt? If you know anything about the character of Imam Hussein and Lady Zainab, salamullahi alayha, and Ahlul Bayt, then they did not have a connection to the Prophet because of his physical features, his physique, his stature, his complexion, the way that he looked on the outside. The connection was far deeper than a connection of a physical memory or the way the Prophet looked or spoke. The last thing that Imam Hussein mentions is perhaps the most important. It was not just the physical appearance and the speech, but it was the khulq and the character of Ali Akbar that reminded Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet, and the physical appearance and the manner of speech and everything else, that was all only one aspect of the similarity. But yet in our imagination, we often think of the similarity as being one of the exterior attributes. How a person sounds, how a person looks, and not what is the intention and what is the character and what are the thoughts and the feelings and the internal life of the soul of a person. So all of these are examples for Imam Ali. If Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was Nafidul Basira Sulbul Iman, if he has a rank that even other martyrs will all be envious of on the Day of Judgment, it was because he was the son and the successor of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So his character represented the character of Imam Ali. And because he represented the character of Imam Ali, he attained a high rank in the eyes of Allah, and he became worthy to be the right-hand man and the standard bearer of Imam Hussein in Karbala. It was Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It was as if a shadow of Imam Ali himself was present in Karbala through his son and through his representative. When it comes to Imam Ali, there are so many attributes and so many virtues that it becomes easy for us to forget or not to give a proper due to his ibadah and his worship. Although we mention it, but there were so many events in his life, so many hardships that he underwent, so many times when Islam and the Muslims were under attack and Imam Ali was the only one to go forward and to save Islam, that his family life, that his worship, it may be something that we would forget. But to get an idea of that worship, a story narrated by our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, is a good illustration. Imam Muhammad Baqir is reported to have said that once I came to my own father, Imam Zainul Abidin, our fourth Imam. And as you know, Imam Zainul Abidin was named for Imam Ali. And not only did he share a name, but he shared a certain eloquence and focus on worship in many ways. Imam Zainul Abidin was a reflection of the personality of Imam Ali and not only his name. Imam Muhammad Baqir says that I came and I saw my father and his skin had turned yellow from staying awake at night and worshiping, and his eyes were inflamed. And I saw that his forehead had become depressed and his feet had become swollen from standing in prayer. And when I saw my father in that state where his physical body had been worn out due to his worship, I began to cry. Now, this is not you or me coming to a loved one or a parent. This is Imam Muhammad Baqir, a ma'soom and an imam. One who is no stranger to worship, to fasting, to recitation of Quran, to dua, to spending the night in loving conversation with Allah and supplication. It is a ma'soom who is coming to a ma'soom. So if Imam Baqir is overwhelmed by the sight of the effect that ibadah has had on Imam Zainul Abidin, then you and I can only imagine what we would have felt if we had seen it, and what level of ibadah Imam Muhammad Baqir must have witnessed in his father that he could not bear the sight of it, and he began to weep. And he said, with tears still in his eyes, that, "Oh my father, what state do I see you in? And what will happen of your physical body and existence if you worship in this way?" And he says that my father, he looked down and he began to contemplate and think. And then he said, "Oh my son, go in such and such a place in my house. There is a sahifa, a book. It contains the mention of the worship of my grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib. Go and bring that book." And then Imam Zainul Abidin, he read from that book. This tells us, inshallah, in the final majlis of this series, we will talk about legacy. And what does it mean for us to carry and to pass on a legacy for our children and for our coming generations. I say children not just as in our own children, but the children of our community and for the next generation of our society. Imam Ali's legacy is described in this hadith, in this book, and in the words that he passed on to his descendants. Imam Zainul Abidin read, and as he read, now Imam Zainul Abidin became overwhelmed. He who had spent so much time and energy and effort in ibadah, that his own son, an imam, a ma'soom, Imam Muhammad Baqir, was overwhelmed at the sight and at the thought of it when he contemplated in that book. And he read, then he was overwhelmed. And then he closed the book now with tears in his eyes and said, "Who is there alive on this earth who is able to withstand the worship that my grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam used to perform out of the fear and because of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, at some point, it simply becomes something that we can speak about and we can contemplate, we can imagine, but we cannot actually picture. Imam Ali, that was his worship, where a person known as Zainul Abidin in his time, the adornment of all who worship, known as Sayyidus Sajidin, the prince of all who prostrate, known with attributes that describe him as always being in worship, in prayer or fasting or recitation of dua and supplications, or in serving Allah in one way or another. When he looks to Imam Ali and says that I cannot imagine and I cannot perform that worship that Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam used to perform. That was the worship of Imam Ali alayhi salam. What was it that made Imam Ali's worship so peerless? Fortunately, it isn't just the quantity, because if it was the quantity, then it would be very difficult for us to even think about starting on that journey to be like Imam Ali. But it was a quality of worship and a focus on the love for Allah that pulls a person in and motivates a person to increase the quantity of worship as well. Don't try to impress Allah by doing a lot, whether it be Laylatul Qadr or any other time of the year. Focus on developing a relationship and a recognition of who is your Creator, and loving Allah and being loved by Allah. And if you love Allah and if you are loved by Allah in return, then worship will become second nature and it will become a part of your life. If I want Allah to love me, then I have to love Allah. قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. If I want Allah to love me, يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ is the outcome. The starting point is, إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ. First, love Allah. When you love Allah, then you will want to see what is it that Allah has commanded. فَاتَّبِعُونِي. So you will follow the Prophet. And when you love Allah and you follow the Prophet, then in return Allah will love you. And when Allah loves you, then He will accept your worship and He will draw you in to a continuing relationship. So for example, if you begin to become distracted, then Allah will create circumstances in your life where He reminds you that you need to come and do dua and call upon Him. And if you become susceptible to arrogance, then Allah will humble you. If you become forgetful, then Allah will remind you. Just like when you love somebody, then you look out for them above and beyond the call of duty. If you also become somebody who is beloved by Allah, then Allah will look out for you above and beyond the call of duty. So don't become overwhelmed and say that if this is the ibadah of Imam Ali, that even Imam Zain al-Abidin was overwhelmed, and Imam Muhammad Baqir then would be doubly overwhelmed, then what hope is there of me? And how can I set on that path? No, the beginning is love Allah. Develop a relationship with Allah. Work to obey the commandments of the Prophet so that Allah loves you. Develop that quality of a relationship, and don't worry about how long you spend in ibadah or in devotion, and Allah will love you. One of the very famous prayers of Imam Ali, Ilahi kafa bi izzan an akuna laka abdan, wa kafa bi fakhran an takuna li rabba. Oh Allah, all the honor that I need in life is to be your servant. Being the servant of Allah is that first stage of fattabi'uni. You work to obey, to serve, so that you become worthy of God's love for you. وَكَفَى بِي فَخْرًا أَن تَكُونَ لِي رَبًّا. And it is a sufficient pride for me that you are my Lord. I don't need to have pride in my wealth or in my social popularity, the number of friends or accomplishments or anything that I may have in this world. وَكَفَى بِي فَخْرًا أَن تَكُونَ لِي رَبًّا. If you are my Lord and I have a relationship with you, that is all the pride that I need. I don't need any other recognition or gratitude or appreciation from my family or from people that I may help or from my community or from anyone in this world. That is sufficient. This was the dua of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Another hadith describes how Imam Ali viewed ibadah. And note here as well that it is not the quantity that Imam Ali focuses on, but rather it is the quality or the reason for worship that Imam Ali focuses on. He says there are three types of people. Many of you have heard this hadith and are familiar with it, and it will be a reminder for myself and for all of us. إِنَّ قَوْمًا عَبَدُوا اللَّهَ رَغْبَةً فَتِلْكَ عِبَادَةُ التُّجَّارِ. Some people, they heard the promise of heavenly rewards, and they want some of those good things that are coming to the believers in paradise, and so they worship Allah رَغْبَةً فِي الثَّوَابِ, seeking the reward that comes to the believers in paradise. فَتِلْكَ عِبَادَةُ التُّجَّارِ. That is the worship of those who are business people. They're looking for a profit. They're thinking, I have this life. What is it going to be? 60, 70 years, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Then it's going to come to an end. Let me sell this and get the blessings of paradise, and that will be worship, but it is the worship of somebody trying to profit, which makes you a business person. وَإِنَّ قَوْمًا عَبَدُوا اللَّهَ رَهْبَةً فَتِلْكَ عِبَادَةُ الْعَبِيدِ. Then there are people who worshipped Allah out of fear. They heard the threat of punishment in paradise, that if you don't fast, then you are worthy of torment in the hereafter. If you don't pray, then you are worthy of torment in the hereafter. If you commit sins, then there is an accounting and there is punishment. And so they worship Allah out of fear of that punishment. They are not business people, but they are slaves. Because the slave is always afraid that their master or whoever is in charge of taking care of their schedule, they will be displeased with the amount of time that they are putting into their obligations. You have to always look out for the person that is monitoring you, and you don't want to be penalized or punished. So there is worship. Imam Ali says that that is the worship of a slave. وَإِنَّ قَوْمًا عَبَدُوا اللَّهَ. So what is the third category or quality of worship? It is عَبَدُوا اللَّهَ شُكْرًا. They worship Allah out of gratitude. They worship Allah not because they want something and not because they fear something. They worship Allah because they are grateful for what Allah has given them, and they recognize that He is the source of their existence and all of the blessings that they have, and their knowledge of who is the source of their life and their livelihood and all of the bounties that they enjoy brings them to want to express gratitude to Allah. And فَتِلْكَ عِبَادَةُ الْأَحْرَارِ. That is the worship of worthy people and of free people. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now one question that comes is, if that is the quality of worship that we should be seeking, then what happens to the business people and what happens to the slaves? Are they even worthy of a reward? When it comes to human relationships, if you come to me and you say that you are my friend and you want to spend time with me and you want to do something for me, and then I find out that you just want to get a loan from me or you want to borrow something that I have, then I will not consider you worthy of any special love or any special reward beyond what it is that you were working for. You weren't interested in me. You are interested in what you could get from me. So if you become my friend as a business person, then will I have any special love for you? No. I'll say that you befriended me in order to borrow something that I own. You befriended me in order to get a job through my reference. You got what you wanted. I don't owe you anything. In fact, I may even have a little bit of a grudge that I was misled or I was used and the person did not really care about me at all. if somebody is close to me just because they are afraid of me. When I find out that it is fear and not friendship, then I may similarly feel let down. I may similarly feel that we don't have a real friendship or a relationship. So if Imam Ali says that the ideal is the worship of love and gratitude, is he saying that the worship of raghba and the worship of rahba is wrong and unworthy? Is it fair to compare it to me becoming your friend because I want something from you? Or me becoming your friend because I am afraid of something that you might do? And the answer is no. There is a difference. The difference is that the punishment that I give or the reward that I give is something separate from myself. If you can get money from me, the money is not me. And if there is some harm that I can do to you, that harm is something other than myself. But the reward and the punishment of Allah is not different than the manifestation of the mercy and the justice and the attributes of Allah Himself. So if you worship Allah for paradise, you are worshiping Allah for His sake. And if you worship Allah to flee from hell, you are worshiping Allah for His sake. But it is not a profound understanding of Allah. It is Allah whose attributes are manifested in His punishment. And it is Allah whose attributes are manifested in His reward. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just His reward and His punishment. وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. The essence of God and the love of God and the connection to God, separate from His reward and separate from His punishment, is greater than those manifestations of His attributes. And so this understanding of ibadah as described by Imam Ali is not saying that the worship of seeking reward or the worship of fleeing from punishment is bad, but rather saying that those are stepping stones. Those are a form of true worship, but they are not the highest form of worship. You worship Allah seeking reward, and you are worshiping Allah. It is accepted, it is valid, but there is a higher form of worship. You are worshiping Allah to flee from His punishment. That is true worship. It is sincere, it is rewarded, and it is valid, and it is accepted. But it is not the highest form of worship. The quality of worship that Imam Ali is calling us towards is to worship Allah out of love and out of gratitude and out of recognition for who He is and who we are, separate from any promise of reward or any threat of punishment. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So once again, the quality of worship is the first step that we should be aware of, which brings us to be motivated to increase the quantity of worship. And the last thing that I will say is the unique aspect of the worship of Imam Ali alayhi salam, is that his worship was not limited to one form. You and I, when we think of worship, then what comes to mind is probably a caricature of true worship. We think of prayer, we think of recitation of Quran, we think of the things that we do in the masjid or the things that we do when we make wudu and we have that special intention. But the quality of worship of Imam Ali alayhi salam, it was every aspect of life. Everything that you do, from the very first moment of your day until the very last moment of your night. Whether it be earning a livelihood, or it be taking care of your personal needs or your hygiene, or it be taking care of your family, or it be ritual or worship, all of it is equally ibadah. And that is what is represented in the slogan described in Surah Al-An'am, Inna salati wa nusuki. Yes, my prayer and my ritual, my worship and my devotion, that is for Allah. Because who else are you going to pray for? Who else are you going to worship for? If you believe in one God, then it will be for Allah. But also, wa mahyaya wa mamati. In the entirety of my life and my existence and even my death, that is for the sake of Allah. That is what we aspire to when we honor and we remember Imam Ali alayhi salam. It isn't just that he spent his nights in worship. It isn't just that he would recite 1,000 rak'ah of prayer, sometimes in a single day. It isn't just that he would spend an entire night in dua or in recitation of Quran. This is just one sliver of the ibadah of Imam Ali. But the reality is that وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. There are among the believers those who have sold their entire existence, their being itself, every breath, every word, every action, it belongs to God. And that is what we aspire to. On this night of Qadr, when we worship, then don't think your worship is your prayer or your dua or your tasbih or any other individual act that you may do. But what we learn from Ahlul Bayt and what we learn from Imam Ali is that during these special nights, we turn our attention to ask Allah that make us live in such a way that even when we go to work, even when we go to school, even when we go to play football or just refresh our bodies and our minds, all of that is dedicated to Allah and is for Allah, and all of it through the intention becomes worship. Because that was the life of Imam Ali. And that is why when Imam Ali was struck that fatal blow, the first words that came out of his lips were Fustu bi Rabbil Kaaba. Imagine what a difficult night it must have been, this night, the 19th of the month of Ramadan. According to narrations, Imam Ali was a guest at the home of his daughter, Kulthum. And having invited her father for iftar in the month of Ramadan, she prepared an iftar out of love, a daughter's love for her father. But she was raised in the household of the Prophet. And she knew that this month of Ramadan was not like any other month of fasting for Imam Ali. Although he always ate very little, this month it was as if he only ate 1 or 2 bites. And when he was asked that, "Oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, how is it that you are not eating for iftar after you have fasted, after you have fatigued yourself?" Then he would prepare his children and his family for the journey that he was embarking on. He would say, "Your father wishes to meet Allah without his stomach being full." He was telling them that his days on this earth were now numbered and soon he would return to Allah. That night, Kulthum was in a dilemma. She wanted to honor her father by making the best iftar that she could. And at the same time, she knew that Imam Ali would not eat a fancy meal. After much thought, it is said in narrations that she brought bread along with just 2 things, milk and salt. And Imam Ali said to his daughter that, "Oh, my daughter, when has your father ever eaten such a fancy meal? When has your father ever had a feast?" And maybe she said that, "Oh, father, it is just bread, that too dry, simple bread. It is milk and salt, nothing fancy. And Imam Ali said, take one of these things off of the table so that I can have a simple meal. Maybe she wished to take away the salt so that Imam Ali could have milk, which has nourishment and sustenance. And he said, take the milk, I will have just a morsel of bread and salt. Imam Ali did not eat much that night, and then he went to worship. And he spent that night in worship. When the dawn came, it is said that Imam Ali, he wanted to go towards the masjid, but Kulthum could sense that this was not a night like other nights, that Imam Ali was not in his normal state, and maybe she could even see in the air itself and in the heavens that there was preparation for a grave tragedy, because Ahlul Bayt, they could see with their spiritual eyes in addition to their physical eyesight. Maybe somebody came from the household of Imam Ali to say that, oh Imam, why don't you stay at home? Pray your nafilah and your morning prayer at home. Let Imam Hassan or let somebody else lead the prayer. And Imam Ali said that I have been given a promise by my brother Rasulullah. For 30 years have I waited for that promise. And now I will walk towards what Allah has decreed for me. As the Imam left home, it is said that there were some birds that were outside in the courtyard. They came and rushed towards the Imam, and there was a commotion, and it was as if they grabbed at the clothing of the Imam itself, as if people did not recognize the value of the presence of Imam Ali in their midst. But those animals and those birds recognized who it was that was walking before them and would never walk after this morning. The family of the Prophet, they came forward to move those birds away so they would not disturb the Imam, and the Imam said, "Da'hunna fa innahunna nawa'ih." Leave them, for they are foretelling a tragedy that is to come. Once again, Imam Ali prepared his family, but there was nothing that could prepare them. For just a few short hours later, when the adhan of Fajr was called and Imam Ali stood in prayer, and Ibn Muljam came forward with a poisoned sword and raised his arms above Imam Ali and struck the Imam with a blow that was so hard that Imam, who never faltered in battle, who never fell and never turned in battle, now was not able to steady himself on his feet, and he came to the ground and he completed his prayer in a sitting state, not able to stand. And then he covered his wound with sand to stop the bleeding. And he called for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. Imam Ali was struck with that fatal blow, and although he was weak, still he said that, "Let me go home to my family." It is sometimes said in narrations that initially when he left the masjid, Imam Ali was leaning on Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein because it was difficult for him to walk. But then when he came close to the home, he said to those who were with him, "Let me go home on my own feet, because Zainab and Kulthum, they saw me walk to the masjid, and if they don't see me walk home, then the pain will be too much for them to bear." Oh, Abu Abdullah, what was it that Zainab saw in Karbala? If she would not be able to see the sight of the wounds of Imam Ali, how was it that she could see the sight of Imam Hussein wounded on the sands of Karbala, moving his head towards prostration, calling out to his Lord that, "Oh Allah, I return to you"? How was it that Zainab stood and saw the sight of the martyrdom of her beloved brother and her Imam? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Oh Allah, tonight is a night of worship. We learn from Imam Ali that every moment of our life should be worship. Grant us in this night to dedicate our existence, whatever we earn, whatever we learn, whatever we accomplish, whatever position or honor we earn in our life, grant us to dedicate it all to your service. So as we worship you tonight, we turn our entire life into worship. Oh Allah, we learn from Imam Ali that worship is not just about quantity, it is about quality. Oh Allah, grant us the depth and the sincerity that we don't look at the promise of reward you have given us, and we don't look at the threat of punishment because of our sins, but we look only at your generosity and your bounty, and we worship you out of love and out of gratitude for all that you have done for us and all that we owe you. Oh Allah, we learn from Imam Ali that there can be no limit to ibadah. We are not able, because of our own limitations, because of our own schedules, because of our own weakness, to worship every night as Imam Ali worshipped. But on these nights of Qadr, grant us, O Allah, the tawfiq to stand in prayer, to recite Quran, to recite the du'as that we learn from the Prophet and the family of the Prophet, to ask from you all that we need for this world and for the hereafter. O Allah, grant us a taste and a flavor of the depth and the beauty and the love that Imam Ali and Imam Zainul Abidin and Ahlul Bayt had for spending the night in worship and in tears and in loving conversation with yourself. And O Allah, grant us to remember our families, our scholars, our martyrs, our elders, and our fellow believers in our prayers on this night. Accept our du'as and our worship, and keep us together as a family, as a community, as an ummah. Keep us in your protection, and deliver us with devotion and with sincerity to the path and to the arms of your Imam, so that we may be his followers and his obedient servants when he spreads his message of justice throughout the world. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ya Hussein, 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 everyone. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. The strike of the sword has killed Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. The strike of the sword has killed Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Everyone. Ali, Ali, the night of 19th Ramadan, awaiting the Fajr Adhan. The land is quiet and calm, but crying for my Imam. Ali, 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 Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. He leaves his daughter's home towards the masjid's dome. She weeps, "Father, don't go," and her tears begin to flow. The strike of the sword has killed Ali. Ali, Ali, Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Entering the mosque at night with Ibn al-Jam in sight. My Mawla knew the time has come for the evil to be done. Ali, 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 Ali. Mawla said, O cursed man, arise and do the bad you can. I am not afraid of your deed. By my Lord I will succeed. The strike of the sword has killed Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. When Haidar's head was in sujood, Jibreel descended reciting the road, knowing the blood of Ali would be shed. Ya Ali, the angel said, Ali, 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 Ali. With full force when the poisoned sword split Ali's head, oh my Lord, the heavens and the earth cried aloud, angels weeping, their heads bowed. Ali, 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 Ali. The Lion of Allah, wounded in pain, calls my son Hassan, Abbas and Hussein. Lift my body and take me away. For children, this is Allah's way. The strike of the sword has killed Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Ali, 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 Ali. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we can make our way to the Green Hall for the A'mal of Laylatul Qadr. We will recite Ziyarat of Imam